I want to mention that there's no heterosexual explanation for this. Watching Arcane, I'm gonna be honest, like, I didn't really get into it as much as most people did. I thought it was okay. But as someone who has kind of become known partly for talking about LGBT representation in media, I do want to kind of give my take on this. But I don't really have enough to say about it to like really justify like I'm gonna make a whole video. I'll say this though. They clearly know what they're doing. They're clearly trying to set it up as like we want people to see these two as a couple. And the arm that my brain took us to from that point, gay couple in show, also a WLW couple, instead of an MLM couple. And that led me down the rabbit hole of people keep complaining that there's a lot of WLW representation and not a lot of MLM representation. And a lot of people I've seen, especially in the comment sections of when I talk about these relationships, they tend to go in the direction, why are we not showing more MLM representation? And they tend to come to the conclusion that's more stigmatized than women loving women. And I want to give my take about it because it constantly comes up and I've never really addressed it. And here's basically what I think. I don't think it's a stigma against MLM relationships. I mean, in this case, that might be the case to some degree because this is a much more mainstream story. And that was kind of like the vibe I got from it, was it feels like a lot of animated like adventure like type stories, but it seems like they're also trying to market it more to a mainstream audience because League of Legends is super popular. So like, I don't know how to really read the intention behind it. So I don't really know if they were thinking like, oh, people love lesbians, let's throw some lesbians in there. I don't know if that was kind of the idea, but in most cases, and it might be in this case too, you tend to see most of these relationships being written by women. Steven Universe, Rebecca Sugar. Again, Rebecca Sugar with Marceline and Bubblegum. Of course, she's going to write about her own experience. Noelle Stevenson, when they were the showrunner of Shira and the Princesses of Power, they identified as female. And I think that they were probably writing from their experiences growing up as a queer female. Like, a lot of these couples are being written by women. I don't know if Rad Seacrest, is that how you pronounce his name? The writer for Kipo, I think he's heterosexual, but that's one of the few cases where we saw MLM representation, and probably because as a guy, he has a bit more insight to that. And I think it's less of a issue of like stigma and more of an issue of just there aren't a lot of male creators who are queer in animation. I think that's more what's going on. A coincidence combined with just a representation issue of like there aren't queer men writing in animation as much as there are queer women writing in animation, or at least show running in animation. So maybe that's kind of more where the energy should be, because I think a lot of times we just want to be like, oh, let's fucking go wild and just like blame the studios, blame the fucking establishment. Like, damn, they just don't want to show us gay men. When in reality, it's probably also just an issue of like, there aren't gay men out here writing shows. And maybe that's kind of where the focus should be. Like, maybe we need to fight more for there to be more gay representation in the writer's room. Because that's usually how it starts, is you fight for the representation in the writer's room and then you see it on screen. Kipo is great, but I definitely think we should have more MLM rep, and I hate the discourse about this topic because people think wanting MLM means hating women, loving women. We can have both. Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the thing, is I have seen some people act really weird about it. I'm not gonna pretend I haven't. There does seem to be some thinly veiled, like, whatchamacallit, lesbophobia. Is that a word? I'm assuming it is. That does seem to be a bit in there in some cases. I think there are also just a lot of cases where people are like, yo, listen, like, I'm a gay dude, I'm watching cartoons, I want to see more stories about me, which is entirely reasonable. We do need more representation, but like I said, it should be more focused on, like, I think we need to support gay creators, support gay writers, and I think that's ultimately like what it tends to be. Is there an argument that maybe we support lesbian creators more than we support gay male creators? Maybe. And maybe that's something that some people are subconsciously doing, and I think that's something that maybe there needs to be some introspection about. But I just wanted to use that as an opportunity to talk about that, because I've seen a lot of people, not even in my mentions, but in the comment sections of like videos I make where I'm like, oh, here's what we needed to do to get Lumity, and then people are like, yo, but why is there no MLM representation? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't think there's like an agenda against it though. And that seems to be what it is I feel weird when people try and like discount the representation that's there because they feel like there's some sort of like agenda against men being gay. Which, I mean, there needs to be more representation, but I don't want to potentially step on the representation we have, because I feel like that's not productive and I don't think it's necessary. It could be a broader discussion of people associating queer rep with femininity. I mean, that's probably there too, and I think that, like, overall, I think masculinity in progressive circles tends to be really stigmatized in general. And I think that makes it very hard for not only gay men, but also masked non-binary people, trans men. I think that's a lot harder for them to find acceptance within progressive circles. And not only are they struggling to find acceptance there, but because they're marginalized, they also don't find acceptance in mainstream circles as well. So I think there is a bit of an issue there where we need to accept that masculinity can be healthy, not to complain about being a man. I think like a lot of times when people try and be like, oh, well, you're talking about issues of like masculinity and like hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity, complaining about like the standards of masculinity being toxic or whatever, you're just looking out for men. And it's like, yeah, I'm looking out for men, all men, trans men included. Like, here's the biggest thing. Like, I've seen self-proclaimed feminists saying that like short men aren't real men. I'm like, would you say that to a trans man? And then like that's like the checkmate. This shit is actually like affecting marginalized people. It's not just like cis straight white dudes. Like, if you're gonna be like, oh, you have to be at least 6 feet or else you're not a real man, and you're a feminist and you're like being like, oh, well, men aren't oppressed, therefore I'm in the right. What about trans men? What about non-binary masked people? Well, maybe it's affecting gay men who are short and already struggle with their masculinity. Maybe this shit is actually affecting marginalized people. That's my my soapbox topic.